has everybody consented?
Is everyone okay with the recording? I'm asking the participants. Are everyone
Yes,
okay
that's
with
fine. That's yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone. So we have Mr. Sauparno Roy with us. He's going to talk about butterfly conservation. So over to Mr. Roy.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shauparno. I'm from Kolkata. I'm from an organization, Nature Mates Nature Club. Actually, I work here as a researcher in a butterfly garden. So today I'll be discussing about the proper way to conserve butterflies in your backyard. How can you conserve butterflies in your backyard or in your terrace or in your garden? Okay, so first of all, I'm sharing my screen. Please let me know if I'm audible perfectly and the screen is visible. Okay. So my screen is visible.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm audible perfectly.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, fine. So let's start. Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to say why should we conserve butterflies? Uh, the first point I want to clear that they have right to live just like us. Okay, and they're immensely important for our ecosystem. They are a big pollinator group and they help in pollination of a wide range of plants, including our cash crops. And we know that currently the value of our crops, and if these kind of pollinator groups get extinct, then we have to do man-made pollination for our crops, and the value of those crops will be much higher. And the second point is it establishes a strong prey base in the food web. The butterflies are the food for a wide range of animals. Wide range of animals like birds, like bee eaters, and reptiles like garden lizards. They are food for the insects like praying mantis. They are food for different kind of the reptiles. And another important ecological importance is that they help in propagation and conservation of native plants. What happens actually is they are mostly dependent on various native Indian species, and by conserving those butterflies, we can actually conserve these plants as well. And lastly, they act as a bioindicator of a healthy ecosystem. If the butterfly population is higher in a place, we can certainly say that that place is well balanced in terms of ecosystem. So what we have to do in order to conserve butterflies in our backyard? First, we have to know what are the butterfly species in our surroundings, because until and unless we don't know what are the species we have in our backyard, we cannot conserve them, because they are highly host plant and highly plant specific. Their life cycle depends on a very narrow range of host plants. And then after, what we have to do is we have to document them. We have to take pictures of those butterflies. We have to observe their behavior. What are they doing during the day? And try to understand their abundance pattern. That means what are the number of the butterflies in our backyard? Why it is important? This abundance pattern will help us to understand which species are the resident species, which species are the visitor species, and which species need more conservation value and which species need slightly less conservation. And after that, we have to identify their needs. So what are the resources of butterflies that they need? They specifically need some plants, the host plants in which they complete their life cycle, and the nectar plants from where the adult butterflies feed. And we have to introduce those host and nectar plants in our backyard. It may happen that there's already some host plants and nectar plants, both the garden variety and wild variety in our habitat. First, we have to conserve them, and then we have to introduce new host plants and new nectar plants. And we have to regularly maintain those plants and keep documenting in order to understand what is the success rate of our backyard butterfly garden. And lastly, we have to share our documentation to spread awareness, because this is where we seriously lack. And I think that we need to share our documentation, our thoughts with everyone, to our general public. So first, we have to identify our backyard butterflies. So this is a basic butterfly morphology. We all know that the body is mainly divided in the head and the thorax and the abdomen. So they have compound eyes, and the feeding structure is known as proboscis. It is a coiled structure, and the thorax is divided into three parts: prothorax, mesothorax, and metathorax. Each thorax bears a pair of legs, and they have two pairs of wing. The forewings are joined with the mesothorax, and the hind wing is joined with the metathorax. And this is the abdomen. And also when you are going to identify your butterflies with some typical taxonomical book, they use some typical terms in case of the wings. Like if you follow Evans, they have some typical terms to describe the wings. So we also have to know different parts of the wings. So this part is called as cell. That means this area. This is a striped tiger butterfly wing. So this part is called cell. This area is called the costal area. This area is called the apex area. This area is called the tarmen. This one is the tornus. Okay. And for hind wing as well, this one is the costa area. The typical end portion is called the apex. This part is called the tarmen, and the wait a minute, and the portion that is joined with the thorax, this called is the base. So we can use different taxonomic, different guidebooks for identifying butterflies. First, we'll have to know that what are the taxonomic classification. So basically, butterflies and moths, they belong to the order Lepidoptera. Lepidoptera comes from two words. Lepis means scales, and pteron means wings. That means they have scaly wings. So you can see this is a the magnified image of a wing of a monarch butterfly, and you can see small scales arranged in the wings. So the butterflies are mainly divided into 6 species in case of India, and outside India there is another sixth family in case of India, and outside India we have another family called Hedylidae. And firstly, the Papilionary family, they are the mainly short tails and swallowtails, like common Mormon, lime butterfly. They are the Papilionary family. The Pierids are the whites and yellows, like the emigrants, the grass yellows. They are the Pierid family. The Nymphalids are the brush-footed butterflies. They have they are the crows and the tigers. Those are the Nymphalid family. And the Lycaenid are small blues, like the plains cupid, like the grass blues. Those are the Lycaenid families. The Rhyadinids are the metal marks. This is slightly rare than the other families. They are metal mark, like the Punchinello, the Punches, and the Judys. Those belong to the Rhyadinid family. And lastly, Hesperid family are the skippers and the flats and all. And they mainly resembles very much with the moths. So we have to understand what are the difference between moths and butterflies. So the basic difference is in the antenna. The butterflies have a club shaped antenna, whereas the moths have different kind of antennal shape, like the leaf shaped or the comb shaped or the pointed antenna. Whereas the butterflies, in case of butterflies, they have the club shaped antenna. So this is a basic structural difference between moths and butterflies. And another structural difference is that the moths have the structure called a fringe-like structure called frenulum, which joints the forewing with the hindwing. So their forewing and hindwing is joint near the base. Whereas in case of butterflies, the forewings and the hindwings are free from each other. Now we have some misconception like moths are really dull colored and the butterflies are really bright colored. This is not true always. In these pictures, can you just tell me any one of you which one are the butterflies and which one are the moths? Anyone, can you tell me?
Third and sixth are the moth.
This one and this one. Okay. And the rest of them are butterflies.
Yes.
So actually, the first one, Tetragonus, is a moth. The next one, Discophora, is a butterfly. They look very similar to each other, but this one is a moth and this one is a butterfly. Similarly, and they are dull colored. Similarly, Dysphania, this one is a moth, which is a bright colored moth, and Neurosigma, this is a butterfly. They also resembles very much, and both of them are very bright. So the upper one is a moth, the lower one is a butterfly. And this one, the Calidula, this one is a moth and this one is a butterfly. They also look similar, but this one is a moth, this one is a butterfly. What is the difference? I told you everyone that the club-shaped antenna, if you can look very closely, these butterflies, this one, they have club-shaped antenna, whereas these are pointed. Okay, so this is not always true that the moths are dull colored and butterflies are bright colored. There are numerous bright colored moths and dull colored butterflies. Another things we have to remember while documenting and identifying butterflies in our backyard, that there are plenty of similar looking species. Like in these three pictures, if we just identify them, if we just see them in first glance, they all look same. They all look like a single species. But if you see closely, these butterflies have two dots here. So this is a common grass yellow butterfly. This species, this individual has 3 dots instead of 2. This is a 3-spot grass yellow, and this one is a single spot. This is a 1-spot grass yellow. So everyone is individual is a different species. This is a 1-spot grass yellow. This is a common grass yellow. This is a 3-spot grass yellow, but they look very similar to each other. Another thing that you have to remember is butterflies, many species of butterflies show polymorphism. That means they have multiple forms in a single species. As you can see in this picture, this is the picture of common mime butterfly, Papilioclytia. So this brown one is called the Clytia form and the white one is called the Dissimilis form. But they both of them belongs to the same species, Papilioclytia. The next thing that you have to remember that many species of butterflies show sexual dimorphism. That means the male differs, the appearance of males are different from the females. Like here in case of the Indian sunbeam butterfly, the males have the bright orange upper wing, whereas the male has a dull blackish with a white patch upper wing. And this is a very common butterfly. We all have seen this. This is a striped tiger butterfly. So the male have a gland-like structure, androconial gland. It is called androconial gland. So this structure is present in case of male, whereas this is absent in case of female. So many species of butterflies also show sexual dimorphism. The next thing is mimicry. And in field, we mistake these mimics and models the most. Like this is the plain tiger butterfly. This is a model butterfly. This is an aposematic, non-palatable butterfly. The birds do not feed on these butterflies. And this is a Danite eggfly female. They mimic plain tigers. So the appearance is quite similar. And in field, if you see the Danite eggfly, many of times you can make an error in identifying. Similarly, in case of common Mormon butterfly, in the females have three forms: the Cyrus form, the Stichius form, and the Romulus form. The Stichius form mimics the common rose butterfly, and the Romulus form mimics the crimson rose butterfly. And what is the difference? The difference is in the abdomen color. The Mormons have a black abdomen, whereas the roses have an red abdomen, in case of the common rose as well as in case of the crimson rose. And crimson rose is a Schedule 1 butterfly. And you have to document different butterfly behavior, like nectaring. You will frequently see you will frequently see this kind of behavior where the butterflies protrudes their proboscis into the tunnel, the floral tunnel, and sucking the nectar. This is a typical basking posture. This is a gray pansy butterfly. Actually, butterfly needs sunlight, the solar energy, to activate, to conduct their daily activities. And this is a basking posture from where they are taking the sunlight. This is called the mud puddling, where the males of the butterflies, they collect salts and nutrients from the soil, and they transfer these salts and nutrients to the female body during mating as a nuptial gift. This is a mating posture of a tonychoster butterfly, and this is a egg-laying posture of leopard lacewing butterfly. So these are the different kind of butterfly behaviors that you may see in your backyard garden. Whenever you see this kind of behavior, document them. So till now, you can ask any questions. So regarding the butterfly identification and different mimicries and polymorphism, etc., you can ask any question.
Perhaps later in the email thread, would you please share kind of a, identification guide for blues and all?
Just a minute. So I'm just skipping some slides so that I can tell you about the different families and how you can identify at least till the family level.
Yeah, I also had a question. You
Yeah.
mentioned about mimicry. So I wanted to ask, why do butterflies mimic? I mean, what is the reason for their mimicry?
So that's basically a defense mechanism. So the model is generally unpalatable to different birds and all. Okay. So I'm just taking that question first about mimicry. So here, this is a plain tiger butterfly. This is a model. This is an aposematic, non-palatable butterfly. Birds do not feed on this butterfly. Okay. So they are they have the least mortality rate due to predation. And this is not a non-palatable butterfly. If they mimic the model, in case of appearance, the birds sometimes make a error judgment, it can identify this dynamic flight as a plain tiger butterfly and won't hurt them or won't catch them. So this is actually a defense mechanism by which the mimic mimics the appearance of a model butterfly, model aposematic non-palatable butterfly, and just
Okay, thanks.
take their advantage. Okay.
Excuse me.
So yeah.
Can I ask something? With respect to the caterpillars, do birds differentiate between edible ones and inedible ones?
Sorry, I can't hear you properly.
With reference to caterpillars,
Huh?
can birds distinguish between palatable ones and unpalatable ones?
In case of caterpillars.
Caterpillars, yeah.
Yeah, they can actually.
Okay. because cuckoo family birds are supposed to exclusively feed on caterpillars. So I was just wondering whether they also feed on the
No,
tigers and.
they also avoid those caterpillars of those non-palatable butterflies. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so these butterflies are the papilionids. So how you can identify those family? Like if you can see, most of the species have this tail-like structure. So the butterflies belonging to the papilionid family are the swordtails and swallowtails. So they have this tail-like structure. They are much bigger in size than the other families. So this is a typical papilionid family. This is not. This is a lycaenid family. Okay. This is also the papilionid family. You can see the tails, which I have mentioned earlier, the tails here, and they are much large in size. So these are the periodids. I've told that they are the whites and yellows. If they open their wing, the color of the upper side of the wing generally becomes white or the yellow. These are the period family. These are the nymphalids. They are the brush-footed butterflies. Why they are called brush-footed? Because the prolegs, like the first pair of legs, they are very small and intact. If you can see here, these are the first pair of legs. They are inactive and very small. So if you see a nymphalid family, you generally see 4 legs like this. Okay. So every species of nymphalid family, if you see like from distance, you can see only 4 legs. These are all nymphalids. The smallest family are the lycaenids butterfly. If they open their wing, you can get a blue hue. So that is why they are called blues. So these are actually the structural coloration, not the pigmentation. The scales of the wings are arranged in such a way that when the sunlight falls on the wings, it gives the blue hue. These are also the lycaenids. They are the smallest group. And these are the Hesperids. They generally looks like moth. They are the skippers. So if you see this kind of butterflies, generally they fall under the Hesperid family. Do anyone have any other question regarding this? So I'm proceeding to the next session. So till now, I have told you that you have to first document and identify your butterflies. And next, what you have to do, that you have to understand their abundance pattern, that what are the numbers of each species in your backyard, so that you can judge which species are the resident butterflies. That means they have a established population there, either, or is the species a visitor one, that they just visits your garden and goes back. So for that, you have to observe abundance, and for this, you need to do a 30 minutes count. It's also called a time constant 30 minutes count. Actually, I wanted to show you this 30 minutes count in the field. Archon, just check whether so it's raining heavily outside. So if I can make an arrangement outside, I can show you that how to count butterflies in the field. It's almost clear now. So okay, I'm just going outside and I'll show you how to take 30 minutes counts of butterflies. Okay. Rohan, can you? I'm also the hosting from my.
Okay.
Okay, so I work in a butterfly garden. So this is the garden. So it's now almost clear. So possibly I may have some butterfly activities. So suppose this is your backyard, okay? And you want to take a 30 minutes count in your backyard. So what you will have to do is you have to note down some things. First, we have to note down your name. Who is taking the count? Let me just show you. So first take a look of the garden. So I'm just panning. This garden is actually of 3-acre area, and this garden is entirely curated for butterflies. So first, we have to note down who is taking the count, first name. So suppose I am taking the count, I'm writing my name. Okay. Then the date on which you are taking the count and the time. I will suggest that for taking count, you choose between 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Any time between 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. will be good for, because this time the butterflies will be active. So right now it's 3 p.m. exactly. So I have written down 15 hours. Next, I have to take down the, I have to note the temperature and the humidity. So suppose the temperature is right. It's suppose for 25 degrees centigrade and it's raining outside, probably it's 97%. Now I have to take a single route and observe butterflies, and whenever I'll see a butterfly, I'll note down which butterfly it is and what is the number. So I'm starting from here. So this is a crotal area. So here you can see plenty of blue tiger. Can you see them here? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue tigers and 1 common crow here. So despite the rain, there are some activity, and there is a plain tiger as well. So what you have to do is you have to write first. You have seen the blue tiger. You have to tally them. I've seen 5 blue tiger. I have seen 1 crow, 1 common crow. You can ask any question during this time, okay? If you have any question. And 1 plain tiger. Okay. Next, I'm moving along a trail. So we have pathways here in the garden. So I'll follow those pathways and show you if I find any butterflies. So the activity is very low because it was raining just 5 to 10 minutes earlier. So you have to walk in a slow pace and observe both sides, that if any butterflies is there or not. So that's a common emigrant butterfly roaming here and there. So I'm writing down the name. It's common emigrant or Catopsilia pomona, and give it 1. So the activity is really low today. So this is how you have to continue taking these counts for 30 minutes. So I have started this count at 3 p.m. So I have to take the first count till 3:30 and note down what are the species I have seen and what are the numbers. And after that first 30 minutes, you have if you want to continue more counts, you have to start from the beginning. Like, and next 30-minute count will begin from the 3:30 and end in 4 p.m. So let me check. Oh, that's a gray pansy butterfly, and that's a plain tiger butterfly here. So I'm writing down plain tiger as 2, and a new species I have observed, gray pansy.
Suparna, if you can also tell us what plants are there in your garden, that will be, better.
Yeah, I have curated a different session for that. So at that time, I will introduce all the plants.
Thank you.
So Parno, also I was wondering, what is the relevance of this exact time? Like, why do we pick 30 minutes?
Okay, so it helps to not repeat your count actually. So if you take a continuous count, it will be difficult to analyze your data. So if you take 30 minutes count and make 1 or 2 sets, it will be easy to analyze. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So here is another gray pansy butterfly. So I'm doing that as 2. So this is the typical count data. It will look like this. Okay, so I've just mentioning the short form, that like P tiger, that's plain tiger, or C emigrant, that's common emigrant. So it's better if you write the full name. And also search for the lysinids, the small butterflies that we generally overlook during field or during taking these counts. So the lysinids also matters. So here I've seen a common Mormon butterfly. I think I won't be able to show you that species. So that was a common Mormon butterfly over there. So I'm writing down the 6th species as common Mormon. So like this, it will continue like this, okay, till 3:30. Suppose now the time is 3:30. So I'm ending my first count. So I have to again write down. If I want to take the next count, if I have to write down again the time, like it's 3:30. I have to again note down the temperature and humidity at 3:30 p.m. Suppose it's 25 degrees centigrade and 95%. And I have to start a fresh count again. Now, if I see a plain tiger, I won't be adding the plain tiger here in the 3rd position here. I have to write down it separately as plain tiger 1. So that's my first count, first 30-minute count. And suppose I have seen a plain tiger at 3:31, I'm writing down as plain tiger 1 again. So this is the main concept of 30 minutes count. This is how we have to take this count, and it will help you to assess the number. And after plantation, if you when you know the butterflies of your backyard, when you know what are the numbers, and you plant their resources, their host plants and nectar plants, you can continue taking these counts every week to judge your like to understand the success rate of your garden, backyard garden. Okay, so this is how we have to take the 30 minutes count. And if you have any question, about this 30 minutes count, just please let me know.
How many repetitions we should make in a 1 month? If we
That entirely depends on you. If you want to take just one count, 30 minutes count, that will also be fine. If you want to take 2 counts or 3 counts, like if you want to count butterflies for 1 hour, if you want to count butterfly for 2 hours, that's absolutely up to you. It also depends on the size of your backyard garden, like how much area you want to cover to count these butterflies. And one important thing that you have to know about this 30 minutes count is, suppose you have taken 1 hour data, so you have 2 sets of 30 minutes count. You walk down with a single trail, and while returning, if you see any kind of butterflies that has been previously recorded in these 2 sets, you do not count those butterflies. During returning, we don't have to count any butterflies. If we see an additional species that we haven't encountered during this 30 minutes or 1 hour count, we have to just note down that species. So during returning, you don't have to count butterflies. It will be just one way.
Okay, thank you. Do you think twice a month is enough to make to make a publishable data?
Twice a month, yes, twice a month can be a publishable data if you take counts for at least 2 years or 3 years.
Thank you.
Okay. So anyone have any other question?
Okay, we have another question from Abhishek.
Yeah.
So he's asking, is this method only used for butterfly, or can we use it for other animals?
30 minutes count is only used for butterflies. You can also do point count. That is, you can sit somewhere in your backyard and you suppose you draw imaginarily a circle around you, and whatever butterflies comes within that circle, you note that. But which is advantageous in case of this 30 minutes count is it helps you to document more and more butterflies. If you sit somewhere and document butterflies from that position only, it will give you a smaller counts. Okay, so if 30 minutes count is advantageous in that sense, it will provide more data.
Can this be done in a group?
Yes, that can absolutely be done in group.
So how would you
so
do, say there are 5 people or 10 people in the same area, how would you spread it out?
If you can actually work in a group, like 5 of you work simultaneously in same way, or if you have different avenues, like 3 or 4 avenues, you can distribute one of them to each avenue.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
Do you also have a platform where the data can be contributed somewhere, like it's a citizen science kind of platform?
Counted right now, there is no citizen science platform where we can submit our count data. Perhaps there are some citizen science platform where you can submit your documentation, photographic documentation of butterflies. I'll tell about that in later session, but about the count data, right now we don't have that kind of any citizen science platform.
Okay.
Actually it is in development, and I think within a couple of months we have the website where we can actually submit this kind of count data.
How would you verify something like that? So if suppose students are involved in counting butterfly data in different cities, how would you, if suppose we contributed? So I teach a class. So if I wanted to do something like this in class,
okay,
if we wanted to contribute to a initiative like that, how would you verify it in I don't know, if what would be the way in which you can, very young people can be involved in this kind of thing?
So the best way that can be adopted is, if you have any doubt about identifying a butterfly species, try to take a photograph.
Photos.
Okay.
Right.
It actually, the most problem happens in case of identifying the lysinates. Even if we encounter a lysine butterflies from a very distance, we sometimes are unable to tell what the species is. So for that, especially like suppose you have seen a grass blue. So grass blue have 4 species: a dark grass blue, a pale grass blue, a tiny grass blue, and a lesser grass blue. So you have seen, suppose, a grass blue from a quite a far distance. So and you cannot like identify what grass blue is that. So you just write down grass blue species. Okay. So
Okay.
this is I show you a glycinate. So it's right now it's busking over here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So this is a plain cupid butterfly. So this is a male butterfly, and why you can absolutely understand, I think, why it is called blues, because this is a structural coloration. When they open their wing, the light falls upon the scales and it gives the blue coloration. So any other question?
Do you differentiate between butterflies which are resting and those which are flying when you are doing this count?
Sorry, can you please repeat once?
Do you differentiate between butterflies which are resting,
Hmm.
those which are flying when you are doing this count?
No. You can take resting butterflies in the count as well as a flying butterfly.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
And did you use transects also for butterflies, like we do bird counts and all?
Yeah. There is a methods called polar transect method, where you draw a transect and walk through the transect, and you just observe 5 meters both sides from the transect. Whatever butterfly comes in that transect, you document this. This is a well-established method of counting butterflies. That's called the polar transect method. So transect method is also used in butterflies. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so this was about the counting butterflies and understanding the abundance pattern. So right till now, I have told you that first you have to identify your butterflies, you have to document them as much as possible, and then you have to understand their abundance pattern. So suppose you have the count data with you, you have all the butterfly species with you, and now what we will have to do is we have to understand what are the needs of those butterflies. So basically the plants, that's the main needs of the butterflies. They are very specific about host plants, the plants where they complete their life cycle. The caterpillars feed on those host plants, and the nectar plants from where the adult butterflies take nectar. Okay, so I am going to show you another Hesperiid. So I've seen you shown you the Lycaenid butterflies. Now I'm going to show you another Hesperiid butterfly, that is common banded red eye. Why is it called red eye? Because the eye is complete through red. So this is typically a Hesperiid species, and it quite looks similar to the moths. So while identifying butterflies or documenting butterflies, you have to make sure that you are documenting, like you have to make sure that you know that this is a butterflies or this is a moth. So yeah, this was about the 30 minutes count. So now you know the species, the butterfly diversity, you know the abundance. Now we have to arrange for the host plants and the nectar plants. So first of all, I would start with the host plant that comes in mind when we are talking about the conservation of the papilionid group is the lime plant. So I'll show you every plants here. So this is actually the lime plant. The common Mormon butterfly, the lime butterfly, they lay eggs in this plant. So this is the lime plant, and another species is the curry leaves, the curry patta, you know. I'm going to show you that also. So this is a quite wild patch. So you know curry patta, right? So this is the curry plant. So both of these species, the lime plant and the curry plant, they are the host plants of the common Mormon butterfly and the lime butterfly, both of which are the papillionids. Also, they are the host plants. The lime plant are host plants of the blue Mormon butterfly, the common banded peacock butterflies. Though, so if you plant these two plants, the lime plant and the curry patta, so you will have caterpillars of the common Mormon and the lime butterfly for sure, because these two species are quite widely distributed throughout the India. And the next thing I want to show you is the Aristolochia, another species that is the host plant of another two or three papillionid family butterflies. So this is the Aristolochia indica. So this is the host plant of the common rose butterfly and the crimson rose butterfly as well. Crimson rose butterfly is the scheduled 1 butterfly. Those who are based in the Bangalore or the southern India, they know about the crimson rose butterfly. There are plenty of them. And also these are the host plants of the birdwings, the common birdwings, the southern birdwings. So these are very useful plants. This is a native plant, native Indian plant. So there are similar other species of Aristolochia which are used as a host of the other roses and like birdwings, like Aristolochia tagala, but those plants are generally found in the forest region. So this is also this is not you cannot get it from the nursery. So you have to search for these plants in the wild, and if you want to introduce your this species in your garden, you can just simply collect the seeds of this plant and put them in soil, and it will grow by its own. So I have already mentioned 3 plants: the lime plant, the curry plant, and the Aristolochia. So the next plant I'll be showing you is, look, this is a common rose butterfly, the Aristolochia I have shown just earlier. So this is the species that hosts on them. So next I'll be showing you another species, Polyalthia longifolia, the false Ashoka. This is also the host plant of 2 other butterfly species, the papillionid butterfly species, the common jay and tail jay butterfly. So this is the false Ashoka, this one. This one. So these are the typical feeding mark of the jays. So if you plant these 4 plants like curry, neem, nimbu, that is lime plant, Aristolochia, and this Polyalthia, false Ashoka, you have already like covered at least 6 to 8 papillionid species. So next, what I'll have to, what is that? Okay, so next I will show some host plants for the pierid families. So the pierid families mainly uses the cassia species as host plants, like Cassia fistula, Cassia sophera, Cassia alata. So the emigrants, the mottle emigrants, the lemon emigrants, those species use Cassia as the host. So this is Cassia fistula. It gives very beautiful yellow flowers, and I'll show you another one. So this is Cassia sophera. Earlier I have shown you the Cassia fistula. This is Cassia sophera. You can see the bright yellow flowers. Cassia fistula also have yellow flowers. So these are the plants where the emigrants lay eggs, as well as the grass yellows. Now I'll show another cassia species, Cassia alata. So right now we are doing some selective pruning in the garden so that new fresh leaves comes out for the caterpillars. So this plant is Cassia alata. So this is the host plant of lemon emigrant, mottled emigrant, and grass yellow. And this species, Sesbania cannabina, this is a very good host plants of the common grass yellow butterfly. So if you plant this Cassia species in your garden, you will have the caterpillars of different emigrants and grass yellows and several other periods. So would you like me to write down this plant name in the comment box?
I think that would be better. Yes.
Okay.
But not now. You can do it later also. You can communicate through email. Or something
Okay.
like that.
So these are the, so I've already shown you some species of, some host species of the Pieris and the papilionid. Next, I'll show you the host plants of the nymphalid butterflies, like the plain tiger, striped tiger, crow. So first of all, I'll show you this plant. So this is Asclepius curasavica. So this is the host plant of plain tiger and striped tiger butterfly. It is also the host plant of monarch butterflies from America. So it has a very beautiful flower with yellow and red. In some nursery, you can find this plant. For the plain tiger butterfly, the most used host plant is Calotropis gigantea, or the giant milkweed. You can see this plant on the roadside. This is the Calotropis gigantea plant. So this is the host plant of plain tiger butterfly. So we have another tigers in Kolkata, the blue tiger. So blue tiger, you will find blue tiger in every parts of India. So blue tiger generally use a plant species called Dragia volubilis or Watakaca volubilis as their host plant. So it's basically a creeper. It prefers to grow in damp regions. So this is the Watakaca volubilis. This is the host plant of blue tiger butterfly. And I'll show you a caterpillar as well in this plant. Look, so this is the caterpillar of blue tiger butterfly feeding on the Watakaca volubilis. So these are all milkweeds. So the Asclepias, the giant milkweeds, this one, these all are milkweeds, and the tigers mainly feed on these milkweeds to gain like defense from the predators, because these plants, these milkweed plants, are slightly poisonous, and they actually, what they do is during feeding during the caterpillar stage, they collect that uh, poison and stored them in their body. So they themselves become poisonous and the birds do not feed on them. So someone of you were asking that do the birds avoid the caterpillars as well? Yes, because for this specific reason, the birds avoid the caterpillars. So this is another host plant, Nerium oleander. This is the host plant of common crow butterfly. This is also a milkweed species. This one. So if you plant or conserve, if there is already, if the milkweeds are already there in your backyard, you can conserve them or you can plant these milkweeds for the tigers and crows, because those are the species that feeds on these milkweed plants. So next, I'll show you another host plant species, Hygrophila. Hygrophila species, that's also a medicinal plant. It's used to treat anemia. So this plant is the host plant of all the pansies, the lemon pansies, the gray pansy, the peacock pansy, the chocolate pansy. So let me show you that plant. So this is Hygrophila auriculata. These are the host plants of all the pansies. Juronia almana, Juronia atretes, all the pansies host in this plant. So if you plant this particular species, you will cover at least 3 to 4 pansy. Next, I'll show you, this plant is familiar to everyone, the mango tree. So the mango tree is the host plant of the common barren butterfly. So if you have mango tree in your backyard, you can search for the common barren butterfly caterpillars. You may eventually find one. There is another one. That's Kadam, Neolamarchia kadamba. So this is the host plant of a very beautiful butterfly, commander. So this is actually a tree species. It has a very beautiful flower, globular shaped. So these are the plants for the nymphalid butterflies, the milkweeds, the kadam, and the Hygrophila. So I'll show you those plants only, which actually covers 2 to 3 species. So next, I'll shift to the host plants of the lycaenid butterflies. So you all know this plant. Let me show you. Gigifus, the bear tree. So Gigifus is the host plants of all the pierrots like Tarucus and the Castellias, common pierrot, little tiger pierrot, as well as the silver lines, the Spindacis vulcanus. So this plant is also a very good host plants of the lycaenid butterflies. And another one, I have shown you the plains cupid butterflies. So plains cupid butterflies lays egg in the Cycas plant, Cycas revoluta. So I'm now going to show you that plant, Cycas. So I think you all know about this plant, Cycas. So this is the host plant of plains cupid butterfly. So if you plant Gigifus and Cycas in your garden, you can actually cover at least 4 species of lycaenid butterflies. There is another lycaenid species which is very common in southern India as well as in the Mumbai region, the red pierrot butterfly. So the red pierrot butterfly lays eggs in the Bryophyllum. So I'll now show you that. and the Lycaenids have a typical feeding pattern. They only feed on the lower foliar surface and keep the upper foliar surface intact. It makes a film-like structure. You can see this film-like structure in Bryophyllum as well and in Gyrifus. So this is the Bryophyllum plant. So this is the host plant of the red Pierrot butterfly. So this red Pierrot butterfly is well abundant in Mumbai area, in southern part of India. So this is the host plant. And another one I'd like to show you, those who are based in Bangalore. So they have plenty of these plants, Pongamia pinnata, in the roadside. So this is the flower, this is the fruit of the Pongamia pinnata plant. So this is also the host plant of some Lycaenids butterfly. This is the host plant of the Indian sunbeam butterflies and common cerulean butterfly. So these are some host plants of the Lycaenid butterflies that you can actually incorporate in your garden. And I have already mentioned about the Papilionid, the Pierrids, the Lycaenids, and now and the Nymphalids. And lastly, I'll show you some host plants of the Hesperid butterflies. Actually, most of the Hesperid butterflies, they prefer to lay eggs in the Poaceae family, like the grasses, different species of grasses, different species of bamboos. So if you have bamboo patches in your vicinity, in your backyard, try to conserve them. So those are the host plants of some Hesperid butterfly, like common banded that I have shown you just sometimes before, with the red eye. And this Pongamia pinnata plant, this plant is also the host plant of a Hesperid species. This species is common branded all or Hasura chromas. So those who lives in Bangalore, probably you have seen the caterpillars of Hasura chromas during like monsoon. I have seen actually plenty of this common banded all butterfly caterpillar in this Pongamia pinnata plant. So you can actually plant this species in your backyard to host some Lycaenid as well as Hesperid butterflies. So these are some common host plant species that you can actually buy from nursery, or you can have it on the roadside, like the giant milkweed. You can have some seedlings in the roadside, you can plant it from there. So these are some host plants, and now I'll show you some nectar plants. Those are used hugely by the adult butterflies for nectaring. Like they actually use simpler flowers, not the complex ones. So if you plant roses or marigolds in your backyard, so these don't attract the butterflies. So one of the most preferred host plants of for the most of the butterflies is Lantana camara. So I think you have seen these flowers before. So this is a garden variety. So the wild Lantana camara is actually an invasive species. If you like plant those invasive species in your garden, it can like really grow fast and ruin your garden. So if you want to plant Lantana in your garden, always choose the garden variety. So this is the garden variety Lantana with yellow and red flowers. And the next one, so these Lantana flowers is preferred by all of the families, like the Nymphalids, the Pierrids, the Papilionids. Everyone loves them. And one thing that I want to mention, that while planting the nectar plants, you have to keep in mind that every family of butterflies have different proboscis length. The Hesperids, despite of their small body size, they have a long proboscis, and papilionid family has a long proboscis. Otherwise, Lycaenid have a very small proboscis. So you have to choose the nectar plants accordingly. Like you have to choose plants which have flower with a long corolla tube, as well as the plants which have a very small corolla tube. So, and they prefer nectar plants from Asteraceae family very well. So this is a flower I want to show you. You can see here and there this flower. So this is Wedelia. This is a very preferred Asteraceae flower that is preferred by the nymphalids, the Lycaenids, like almost every species. So it has a bright yellow flower. This one. Another nectar plant that I want to show you is mostly used by the nymphalid, the pierid, and papilionid butterflies. Those are Jamaican blue spike. In South India, it's well abundant. So this is the Jamaican blue spike. So the entire appearance of the plants is like this. So they are long spikes. These are basically inflorescence, and from which the flowers come out. The flowers are violet in color. So these are the flowers. So this is also a very good nectar plant for the papilionid, pierid, and nymphalid butterflies. Next, I'll show you a nectar plant that is mostly used by the Lycaenid butterflies because it has a very short corolla tube, and this is just a perfect match for the Lycaenid butterflies. This is called Kufia with a very beautiful violet flower. This one. So these are mainly used by the Lycaenid butterflies. Also, you can search for the Tridax procumbens. That's also a very small flowers from Asteraceae family with the white flowers. This is also preferred by most of the Lycaenid butterflies as well as the nymphalid butterflies. So another plant I want to show you, another nectar plant that is mostly used by the papilionid butterflies because of their long corolla tube that is not usually used by any other family like Lycaenids, because that will be too long for them. You all know this flower. This is Ixora. This one. Ixora is mostly used by the papilionid butterflies and some pierid butterflies as well. And we have, you can also procure, there is a dwarf version of this Ixora called Ixora chinensis or dwarf Ixora. That is also a very good nectar plant that you can introduce in your garden. This is the next plant. You all know this, periwinkle. This is also a very good nectar plant for most of the species. And the next one I want to show you is Jatropha, or somewhere it is called spicy Jatropha. So this is also another plant which is used for used by a wide range of butterfly species, especially the emigrants, the jays, the tail jays, the crows. This one. This plant have a very beautiful red flower. This is Jatropha. This is a very good nectar plant. So these are some host and nectar plants that you can incorporate in your garden to attract butterflies so that they can breed, they can complete their life cycle in your garden, they can have enough food resource. And lastly, I'll show you a plant, Crotalaria. Why I want to show you this plant, I'll tell you. So this is actually a butterfly charmer. So this plant is highly preferred by the all tigers and crows. You can see how many blue tigers are there. And first I show you the blue tigers. Look. So this is the plant, Crotalaria, or the rattle pod. So maybe one question comes in your mind, like why there are so many blue tigers or the plain tigers or crow is like sitting in this plant. So basically this is not a nectar plant. So it has alkaloid called pyrrolizidine. The butterflies, the tigers and crows, they scratch the leaves of this plant with their legs and proboscis and collect those pyrrolizidine alkaloid, and they collect and sequester these alkaloids in their body. And these alkaloids is very much toxic. So their early stages are also taking some poison from the milkweeds, and the adults are taking this alkaloid as a defense mechanism. So this is why the tigers and the crows, they are unpalatable because of this pyrrolizidine alkaloid and the poison, the glycoside, the cardiac glycoside that resides in the milkweed plants. So this is about the plants, the host plants and the nectar plants. And one more thing that I would like to mention, that if we divide the circadian rhythm of a butterfly, we will see that 2/3 part of their daily 24 hours life, they they take rest that at that time. This is called the butterfly roosting. So they mainly start roosting when the sun sets, like from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. till the next morning. So you have to have some trees which have like shady branches where the butterflies can sleep or they take rest or roost. So we have some kind of those plants you can see here. So these are the plants which are used by butterflies. The shrubs, those have plenty of dry twigs, like the Gigi-First plant, it have plenty of dry twigs. So many butterflies prefer to roost in this kind of plants. It also has thorns. It provides an additional support, additional defense. So you have to have some roosting trees as well in your garden so that the butterflies can take rest during the night period. So this is all about the plants. And if you want to ask any question about this host plants and nectar plants, you can feel free to ask.
What is the difference between the wild and garden variety of lantana?
I think he lost his network. He'll be back in a minute.
So my mobile, the network of my mobile just got disconnected. So can you hear me? Am I audible?
I think your network is very bad. So
Yes, yes. Here, I think due to
I
rain,
think
the
it's
network
better
is.
you will re-log in.
Sorry. So actually, my internet connection is very bad due to this rain and this natural calamity. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're audible.
So yeah. So what I was telling is, if you want to plant lantana in your garden, go for the garden variety, because planting an invasive species, I think it won't be a good idea for your garden. Yes, there are wild lantanas here and there. You will find them. Try to protect the wild varieties in the wild. And if you want to plant lantana in your garden, go for the garden variety.
How can differentiate between wild and this garden variety? Just
So
do the
the
flowers are
basic,
different?
no, so the basic difference is the garden variety is not invasive and the wild variety is invasive. This is the basic difference of the garden variety lantana and wild variety lantana. Yes, one thing I want to add, that in garden variety lantana, you will generally find the color of the flowers like yellow and red. That is mostly used in for butterflies. Like, you will also find violet lantana and white lantana. Violet lantana and white lantana are generally not mostly used by butterflies. I don't know, because probably because the red and yellow color looks more attractive to them. And for the wild variety of lantana, you will find mainly pinkish flower. So there is also a difference in the flower color. And also the wild variety of lantana has thorns, which lacks in case of the garden variety lantana.
Thank you.
Okay. So any other question?
Is it
And
possible to totally avoid these exotics?
like
Stanky taffeta, all the coffea, the
yes,
Astripia
you can actually Wedelia you will see grow here and there. Okay, so it's actually native. And Tridax procumbens, that's also a native plant. You can plant Tridax in your backyard.
Tridax is exotic. Tridax is exotic.
Oh, Tridax is exotic. Okay.
Exotic.
So like other small plants like let me show you some. You can go for Clerodendron.
Yeah, okay.
Clerodendron is a very good nectar plants for butterflies. So, and the periwinkle, they have a hybrid, and they have an uh, native species. This is the native variety, which is violet. You can use this.
Periwinkle is supposed to be from Madagascar, I think. I don't think it is Indian.
Oh, you are telling that you just want to use the native Indian species.
Yeah, I mean, to look at the landscape as a whole and avoid totally exotics.
Okay. Yeah, you can do that. You can do that because the butterflies in the wild, they mainly feed on the, they are surviving on the wild plants, wild native plants, nectar plants.
Okay, thank you.
So you can obviously go for the native Indian nectar plants and host plants and avoid these garden varieties and exotic species. You can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Any other question? So if you want to avoid cycas as well, because cycas is a garden variety plant. You can go for another plant that is called Glycosmis pentaphylla, which is the host plant of common Mormon butterfly, as well as this is the host plant of a very small lycaenid butterfly that is called common Quaker. So this is a purely native Indian plant. You can go for that. But what happens is, for most of the native plants, you can't like procure them from nursery, because they must have the garden varieties and all exotic species. Collect and if you want to procure it from nursery, sometimes you have to go for the exotic garden varieties.
Glycosmis is a very good one because the fruits are also eaten by bulbuls and other birds also.
Exactly. And the flowers are also used as a nectar flower.
Thank you.
The Glycosmis flower. It is highly used by the silver-lined butterflies. If you see Glycosmis during the time of like the on the wings period of spindacis, like the silver-lined Indian silver-lined butterfly, you will find 2 or 3 Indian silver-lined sitting and nectaring from the Glycosmis flower. So it's a very useful plant for butterflies. And also another very useful host plants is Ficus bengalensis, because this is the host plant of the common crow butterfly. Ficus bengalensis is also host of a very beautiful lycaenid butterfly, Iraota timoleon, that is scarce the silver streak butterfly. And also the fig fruits, those are highly used by the birds. So if you plant fig tree, the Ficus bengalensis, or the ashwath, so those plants are very useful plants for the butterflies and the birds as well. Any other question? So I'll proceed to the next session. I'll share the list of the host and nectar plants that I have shown you later on in the Slack or in this text chat box. And next, I'll show you some caterpillars. So here in this butterfly garden, we have rearing facility. So we rear butterflies with proper care in controlled temperature and humidity. So I want to show you some of the caterpillars. So am I audible? So I'm back from my laptop.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. So let me show you some caterpillars. So I've shown you the false Ashoka or Polyalthia longifolia, which is the host plants of the common jay and tail jay butterfly. So this is the tail jay caterpillar. This is the final instar caterpillar. And in front here, you can see the first instar caterpillar. So you can understand how much it grows during this larval stage. So if you have any query regarding this caterpillar stage, feel free to ask. Most of us have seen this caterpillar, the lime butterfly, lime caterpillar. So I've told you about this, the Glycosmis plant. So this is the Glycosmis plant, and it's feeding on them. And I've already shown you the Aristolochia, which is the host plant of the roses, the common rose, the crimson rose, uh, the birdwings. So next time I'm going to show you the common rose caterpillar. I can't show you the crimson rose because it's not available here in Kolkata, and it's also a scheduled species. It belongs to schedule 1. So can you see the common rose caterpillar? So this is a common rose caterpillar feeding on the Aristolochia indica. And I've also shown you the plant Kadam, Neolamarchia kadamba, and told you that the commander butterfly that hosts in this plant. So this is a typical commander caterpillar. So it has a very beautiful camouflaging technique. So you can see this end where it fed. So they resembles with their own frass or own poop. So this is the poop and this is the caterpillar. What they do is they take rest in the dried leaves or beside their poop so that they get absolutely camouflaged in the background. So this is the commander caterpillar, this one. Next, I'll show you a lycinid species. I think it won't be visible. The species won't be visible to you, but I'm to show you something. So this is a Gigifus plant. So I told you that they only feed on the lower foliar surface and keep the upper foliar surface intact. They only feed on the lower surface and the inner side tissue. So it keeps a film-like pattern like this. So can you see the film-like thing here? So this is not a hollow structure, it's a film-like structure. So this is the typical feeding pattern of a Pierrot butterfly. And another thing that I would like to mention is when you are searching for the lycinid species, the lycinid caterpillars, search for the ants because they maintain a mutualistic relationship with the ants. They secrete a sugar-like thing from its body and which attracts the ants. And when the ants come and feeds on those sugary thing, the caterpillars get extra protection because where there are ants, the other insects won't come. So this is a mutualistic relationships. So whenever you will find caterpillars of lycinid species like plains cupid, like lime blue, like Pierrot, so you will find the ants are moving here and there in their body or beside them. So this is another like clue by which you can search for the caterpillars, like lycinid caterpillars. So next, I'll show you a Hesperid species. So this is the caterpillar of a common banded Pierrot. Sorry, common banded red eye. This one. Actually, what they do is they make a leaf roll like this and resides inside that leaf roll. So if you find this kind of leaf roll in the bamboo plant or bamboo leaf, you can search for the Hesperid caterpillars because they make this kind of leaf rolls and lives inside this roll. And they also pupate inside these leaf rolls. Can you see this leaf roll here? So there is the pupa of the common banded red eye here inside this leaf roll. So they typically go for these leaf rolls. So yeah, so these are some caterpillars. After you plant the host plants and nectar plants, and after some times, after some days or a month, you can search for the caterpillars. If it's there, then it's absolutely very good sign that your plantation is working in your backyard and they are being used by different species and different families of butterflies. And eventually, if it continues like this, they will create a small population around your backyard, and will they will like continue to live there if they get enough resources, enough nectar resources, and enough host resources. So this was the field part. I think you enjoyed. Now I'm getting back to the presentation. So till now, do any of you have any question? So I've already mentioned how to take this 30 minutes count. I'm skipping this. I've also already shown you in field these host plants, the lime plant and the curry plant, and the species, the common mormon, the lime swallowtail, the blue mormon, and the lime blue butterfly that hosts in this lime plant. I've shown you the false Ashoka and the species, the tail jay and common jay that use this plant as a host plant. I've also shown you that Aristolochia indica, which is used by the roses and the birdwings. I've shown you this cassia species, so I'm just skipping this. I've already shown you these plants in field, and this hygrophila and the mango trees I've shown you. This is not right now in our garden. Maybe you can take a pot of the castor. So this is the castor bean plant. So I have specially mentioned this plant in this slide because this is the common castor butterfly, and this use this castor bean plant as host plants. And interestingly, this species use this plant as most like the only primary host plant. Like if we cut, this is a roadside plant, the castor bean plant. If we cut this castor bean plant, this population of the common castor butterfly will really be in danger. So these are the castor plant. So this is a small sapling. So you will find this castor bean plant beside the roads. Nowadays, due to construction and all the castor plants are being just cut. So this is almost a monophagous species. It like I only know 2 species in my locality where this castor plant, the common castor butterfly lay eggs. The mostly used for 95% instances they use this plant, and for 5% instances they use the tragia, like the stinging nettles. I've shown you these plants already covered. Okay, so, and I've also shown you these nectar plants as well. The Wedelia, this is the garden, this is the wild variety of lantana. So this is highly invasive. And the one I showed you in my garden, that is the garden variety lantana. So these are some common nectar plants: Tridax, Periwinkle, Wedelia, lantana, Jamaican blue spike, Jatropha ixora. So you can use these plants as nectar plants. And this thing I want to add is some butterfly species, they take nutrition from rotten fruits. So if you have rotten fruits in your home, in your house, so you can use these rotten fruits as an additional nutrition for the butterflies, additional sources. So just don't throw away the rotten fruits, use this as the resources for the butterflies. I've also shown you the Crotalaria plant where all the tigers and crows were taking pyrrolizidine alkaloids. These are some caterpillars. I've shown you this lime solitaire. So these are the fourth instar stage. I've shown you the fourth instar stage of lime butterfly. The early stage looks like the bar droppings. So this is called the bar dropping stage. I've shown you the tail jay butterfly. I've shown you the common rose. So these are the emigrant caterpillars. This is the caterpillar of lemon emigrant. And these are the caterpillars of common grass yellow butterfly. So if you plant cassia species, Cassia fistula, Cassia alata, you'll get to see this kind of caterpillars. So I don't know whether you will be able to see this caterpillar. So there is a common grass yellow caterpillar. So it's just green like the leaves, and it's a very beautiful camouflaging caterpillar. This one. So I've shown you the commander caterpillar. This is what I was talking about. They look similar to the dried leaves and their own frass. So where they eat, they reside there only to completely camouflage with the background. And this is the typical feeding sign of a plain tiger butterfly. As though they feed on the milkweed butterflies, they first cut the veins of these milkweed leaves so that the all these poisons, most of the poisons get drained out, and then they start feeding on the rest part of the leaves. I've shown you the mango tree. So this caterpillar, the common barren caterpillar, they feed on the mango tree, and this is a typical feeding sign. They keep intact the mid vein and the other part and start feeding from one side. So if you find this kind of structure, feeding like feeding sign in the mango leaf, so you can search for a common barren butterfly. And this is the common castor butterfly that I was talking about. They feed on the castor bean plant, and those are the eggs of the common castor butterflies. They lay plenty of eggs on the underside of one leaf. And this is the typical feeding sign of a red Pierrot butterfly. As I was telling, that they feed the inner tissue and the lower like follicular surface, and they keep the upper follicular surface intact, which makes it like a film-like structure. Same goes for the Ziphus. You can also see a film-like structure here. I also talked about this mutualism. This is the typical leaf roll that the Hesperid group of butterflies use. So the last part I want to discuss it, share your observations with everyone. Like, you have documented your butterfly species of your backyard. You have counted their numbers. You, as you know the butterfly diversity, you know their host plants and nectar plants. You plant them and keep documenting of your backyard. That will help you to understand if whether this effort is getting successful, whether the butterflies are visiting your garden or your backyard or not. And also share your observation with everyone through Citizen Science platform. So one of the widely used citizen science platform is www.ifoundbutterflies.org. So I'll show you how to submit, how to contribute your photographic documentation in this citizen science platform. I mentioned that in the mail, that try to document as many butterflies as possible. Do anyone have some photos of butterflies with you right now? Anyone?
Yes, I do have. Yes.
Okay, so what species do you have?
I have like black mormon and the common parrot and the blues. One species of the blues.
Okay, so I'm showing how to contribute these photographs in the citizen science platform. so that you can do it by yourself as well. Can you see my screen, right? Can you see my screen? Oh, my internet connections.
It's in the PowerPoint presentation, right?
Oh, no, actually my internet connection is going really bad. That's why I'm just stop sharing and resuming once again, okay? Now you can see, right? The homepage of ifoundbutterflies.org. So this
Yes,
is,
we can see it.
yeah. So this is the Butterflies of India, ifoundbutterflies.org. This is the official homepage. So this is under the umbrella of a project called Biodiversity Atlas India. This page already has like 1053 species page, including 365 life cycle page. It has documentation of 601 larval host plants, 202 nectar plants, and 1,15,312 right now images of butterflies. So this website is very useful for like understanding the biology of butterflies and its identification. Let me show you how to use this website. So if you want to know about, suppose, common Mormon butterfly, so here there is a tab called search by common or scientific name. Here you can just write common Mormon and it will appear by itself. Here, click on that. So by clicking, it will open like this. So here you will have plenty of photographic submissions of common Mormon butterfly, each one with its, wait, my network is really bad. Okay, so each one with its name, its scientific name up to subspecies, whenever there is a subspecies. If the sex of the butterfly can be determined, it will have a sex, like this one, in this case it's a male. The location from where the picture is captured, the date of location, as well as with the copyright with the photographer and a media code. So how you can also contribute this in this website, I'll show you. So in the topmost panel, this is the home page. In the topmost panel, you can see this one, submit observation. You have to click here. In the number 1 point, you can see that it's saying that images are submitted online at HTTP. This is a link where you can submit your images. So I'm going to this link. So it will go for a sign-in option. If you are new, you have to register with your email address and a password. You have to generate a password, your name, the copyright that will be shown in the photo that you have submitted, and register. So after registering, you will get, and you can, like, after registering, you can directly sign in from here. So I have already an account in this, so I'll directly sign in with this. So after registering, just sign in. So After signing in, this page will appear where you will have to submit your image. So first of all, add image. So I've already sorted one image from my desktop. So this one I'm going to submit. This is of a leopard, common leopard butterfly, Phylantha phylantha, which has been taken on 8 January 2020 from this garden only. So right now this photo is getting uploaded. Yes, it's uploaded completely. Now you have to provide information about this photograph. It may happen that you don't know what species this is. So if you don't know, you can like keep it blank. The taxon search. I know this is a Phylantha phylantha. So I'm searching here like Phylantha phylantha. So it's appear as common leopard up to species level and up to subspecies level. It is Phylantha phylantha phylantha. So in India there is only one subspecies. So I will click in this subspecies only. So the taxon is taken. Next, I have to give date. So this photo has been taken in 8 January of 2020. So I have to select the date here. (2020) from month I have to go January and 8. Next, we have life stages, whether it is an adult or a caterpillar or a pupa, whatever. So in this drop down menu, you will get plenty of options like adult, egg, caterpillars, pupation, pupa. Some may mate. You can like photograph them during mating. You can photograph them during egg laying. So in my case, it was just an adult butterfly of a common leopard butterfly. So I mentioned this as adult. Next is location search. So this area is known as Ecotourism Park Butterfly Garden. It's based in Kolkata, Newtown actually. So as there is already previous submissions from this area, Ecotourism Park Butterfly Garden, this is already registered. So I can just click from here. If your location is not registered in this area, you can add that. How you have to add is, first I'm clearing location. If suppose you are searching for some area that is not there in the registered list, so you have to go for this plus sign where you can add location name. Suppose some park like JP Park. Okay, you give your district, you give your state, you give your country. Altitude is optional. If you know the altitude, you can provide that. If not, that's not a problem. You can locate your specific location in this map. If you cannot, just click here, cannot locate on map. So this, your photo will be later on reviewed by 3 peer reviewers. They will map your location by themselves. So currently I'm giving it as Ecotourism Park, the registered one. I'm skipping this one, this altitude. Gender, if I know this is male or female, I will fill up this column, otherwise I won't. So if there is a seasonal variation like the dry season form, wet season form, that you can actually see from that photograph, you can keep it here. So it's a dry, in the drop down box, you can see this, whether it's the aberration or a dry season form or a spring brood or a summer brood, you can add that, but be confident about your like informations. You can have some note on the habitats. And I have also already have my copyright against my name. So this column is filled up. I will now submit my observation here. finish. So after submitting your observation, it's not completely submitted right now. So if you go to here in unsubmitted observations, you will find your image here. It also already has its date and when I'm uploading it and the taxon, adult, location, everything is uploaded. What you have to do is you have to click this tick box that please double check the date and location and the tick this box to submit your observation. Once I tick this box, it is now submitted. Okay, so now if I go to my unsubmitted observations, there is no unsubmitted observations. If I go to my your observations, this panel, it is there. Now in this stage, the photo has been sent to the reviewers. 3 of the peer reviewer team will review your photograph. They will tell that yes, this is Falanta. This is. They will agree with this submission and they will import directly your images to this website. And you will find your images directly in the website with your date and location and your copyright. So this is how you can actually contribute your photographic images in this website. So if you have any question regarding uploading images in ifoundbutterflies.org, you can ask. Does anyone have any
Okay,
question?
so we have a question from Abhishek. I think we have another 5 minutes left, so we'll wrap up with couple of
Sure.
questions. So his question is that are butterflies vulnerable to climate change? If yes, what are the effect of climate change on butterflies?
Look, the climate change is a vast thing. Like obviously they are very much sensitive to the climatic condition of their microhabitat. But you know that there is always a process of evolution. If there is increasing temperature, if the rainfall pattern like changes, they are also coping up with these things. So obviously there have some effects, but it will be seen in a long-term scenario. So there is not any immediate effect, but obviously there will be a long-term effect.
So we have another question from a volunteer. So it's from Shruti. She's asking how to differentiate between non-mimetic female and male common mormon.
Okay, so let me show you.
You want me to repeat it?
No, I've understood.
Okay.
So, yeah. Can you see the slide?
No.
We're not able to see it.
Okay, so sure. Now?
Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay. So this is a common mormon butterfly. So there are 3 forms. This one is a Cyrus form. This one is a Stichius form. This one is a Romulus form. You can see the hind wing pattern. The Cyrus form has very little red spots. Maximum part is covered with the white patches. Whereas the Stichius form, it's more red than the Cyrus one. And this Romulus form, this is the most beautiful form of common mormon. The hind wing is entirely red and you can see the white patches in the forewing as well. So it can be differentiated, the 3 mimetic forms. And the males don't have any form. They just look like this. What you can do is the difference is in the abdomen. The males have a slender abdomen and the female has more tapered and like it's broader in size, the abdomen size.
Okay, we have one last question.
Yes.
So can you also talk about the migration of all butterflies
Migration
and
of?
why do they do it?
Migration of butterflies.
Yeah, why and when do they do it?
Okay, so till now, the most documented migration we all know is of the monarch butterflies. In India, the most documented migrations is from the Eastern Ghat to Western Ghat, the Danine migrations, the blue tigers, the dark blue tigers, the crows, those migrate from the Eastern Ghat to Western Ghat, and similarly the reverse migration. So from that part, the migration of butterflies has been documented in India, and the main like reason behind it is the monsoon rise, the monsoon rain. In case of India, the monsoon is the sole reason for Danine migrations in India, whereas in monarchs, the main reason is overwintering. When there it's I just forgot from where to where they migrate, like from California to Mexico. They migrate, yeah, from California to Mexico they migrate, and when there is winter in California, they start migrating and go to Mexico to overwinter, to cope up with the winter and to go for a small like diapause stage. So for monarchs, it's overwintering. The main reason for migration is overwintering, and in India for Danine migration, the main reason is the monsoon drive.
Okay, thank you so much, and that was a great talk. I think everyone enjoyed it.
I hope everyone enjoyed, and thank you everyone. Thank you the entire SCCS team, the volunteers. You have been thoroughly helpful. So I know that my internet connection is really poor due to this rain and storm out there. And despite everything, you continuously supported throughout. Thank you everyone. And thanks all the participants for being patient and listening to me for long 2 hours. And thank you. Yeah. So if you have any question, you can drop an email in my mail. My email ID is shouparno.roy11@gmail.com. It's SOUPAR. I'm writing down it in the chat box. It's SOUPARNA.roy, ROY11@gmail.com. Where is the chat box? Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think it was a very informative and educative session. I hope everyone enjoyed. And if you have any more questions for Mr. Roy, you can put it on Slack channel, which we have for butterfly conservation. And also, he's mentioned his email ID in the chat box, so everyone can look into it.
Okay.
I thank
So
Aparna Roy.
in the Slack room, I'll provide all the list of the host and nectar plants that I was mentioning, so that you can like procure them as per your choice for your garden.
Yeah, sure. You can do that. Okay. So thank you, everyone. I think we have the talks at 5 o'clock. So take a small break and head back to our talks at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.